Hello students. I, Dr. Archana Sharma, Associate Professor, IMS Noida. I will discuss today key constraints. Keys are very important concept in database management system. Whenever we want to specify any specific record with a particular attribute, there is a role of key comes. We will discuss the different types of constraints. What is the basically meaning of constraints? Constraints are restrictions. Means whenever we want to provide a restriction to a particular attribute, it considered as constraint. Constraint may be on attribute, constraint may be on relation, or constraint may be on a particular record. So here we are discussing today the key constraint. Now look at what is key. A key is a field or set of fields whose value uniquely identify a record. For example, here the SCN, forename, surname, tutor, DOB and gender. We have these different type of attributes. But here only the SCN through which we can uniquely identify that particular record, because name may be duplicate, surname may be duplicate, tutor ID may be unique but is not valid to access the entire record. Date of birth may be duplicate and the gender may be duplicate. So we can consider the SCN as a uniquely identified attribute. So in this example, we have considered the different attributes and how a particular attribute uniquely identified, that is considered as a key. Now, what is candidate key? Here we have considered this key as a primary key. Primary key which can be a single attribute which is uniquely identifying a particular record. Now what exactly is candidate key? Any field or set of fields which can be considered as a key is known as a candidate key. How we can say it is candidate key? Now here let's consider the example. Under this example, we have employee number which is uniquely identify this particular record, because employee number always must be unique for each employee. Again here name is here. For this particular example, it is unique but it may be duplicate. Surname also may be duplicate, and here Smith and Smith is duplicate. Department of course may duplicate, because in one department number of employees are working. So in this particular sales department, this 1034 and 1037, these two employees are working. And here this email is always unique, because email for any mail account cannot be duplicated, whether it is Google account, whether it is Yahoo account, or any particular organization's account. So always the email ID is unique. So here we may consider the email as a unique attribute and employee number as a unique attribute. So we have the candidate key, employee number and email, which is uniquely identifying the record. But because of these two IDs are considering as the unique attribute, we can consider only one attribute as a primary key. We are saying uniquely identifying these two attributes, but we can consider only one attribute, either employee number or email. So we can say the primary key is the candidate key, which is to be used here, either employee number or email. So in the above example, it is possible that company may change the structure of the staff email addresses. Email address structure may be changed. So it would be better to use the employee number as a primary key. Email ID may be changed. Email ID may be the employer is wishing to change the email ID and preference are given, and the structure may be changed to create the email IDs, and ID is generated which is unique to access for that particular record. So here we will see the primary key consisting of only one field is known as atomic key. It means here we are having only one attribute which is uniquely identifying that particular record and has been considered as primary key. So employee number here has been considered as primary key and which is as a unique key. But it is not necessary always. There is only one attribute which can be considered as a single attribute to uniquely identify the record. Sometimes it is possible that one particular attribute is not sufficient to uniquely identify a particular attribute. So what we will do in that case? In that case, we will take the help of compound key. Sometimes this compound key may also be considered as composite key. Sometimes you will observe this compound key has been known as composite key. The concept is same, name is same. So it is possible in some tables there is no one column can act as a primary key. So as I told you, the primary key has been considered over here. The primary key is not a particular unique attribute. Order ID and the product name. These two are duplicate. But if we have a combination of order ID and if we have a combination of product name, we can consider with the combination of order ID and product name as a combination a composite key. So this is considered as a compound key. So the order ID cannot be a primary key as it does not uniquely identify a record. Similarly, product ID cannot be a primary key as it does not uniquely identify a record. So what to do? We may have the combination of order ID and product ID, and with the help of this combination it may have the compound key like this. Next one is foreign key. Whenever we have to establish a relationship among more than one table, in that case there is a need of foreign key. We want to give a reference to the other table. If we consider this particular example in the case of department and teacher, if we look at this department and if we look at this particular teacher table, there is no correlation. These two tables are in isolation. So there must be a common attribute which is as doing the association between these two tables. Here there is no attribute which is establishing the relationship between these two relations. So in this example, we have two tables, teacher and department in a school, and there is no way which teacher works in which department. How do we know which teacher is working in which department? Whether in mathematics, computing or history. So we need to add one department code in the teacher table so that we can associate the department code here and the department code here. Now we will consider this department as a master table and this teacher as a child table. And here the department code must be unique. It should not be duplicated. It means department code should be a primary key in the master table department. Here the teacher ID is the primary key in the teacher table and department code may be duplicated. Of course, number of teachers are working in a particular department, so it may be duplicated. But the condition is it must be a primary key of the master table. Only then the relationship may be established. So this is the concept behind it and you have to be very careful whenever you establish the relationship between more than one table and it is necessary. Otherwise, these two tables will be in isolation. Second thing, you have to be very careful whenever we perform the insert, update and delete operation between whenever two tables are associated. It means if we add, remove or update the department table, there is no harm. But if we remove the details from the teacher. Suppose you have deleted, sorry, if we delete a record from the master table, so we have to be careful and the oracle or any RDBS have to be very careful to delete the all records from the master table also. Otherwise, there will be inconsistency. It should not be happen the record doesn't exist in the department. Suppose 005, but 005 record exists in the teacher. So it is not possible the teacher is working when the department does not exist. So this is the basically concept behind the foreign key. Now, how to represent the keys? Primary key and the foreign key. Primary key must be underlined and foreign key with the asterisk. Here, whenever we are giving the underline, it means this card number is the primary key. The candidate number for this tuple is the candidate key. But here in this case, यहाँ पर ये आपका जो ये ID है, it is mentioned over here as asterisk. It means it is a foreign key. So whenever there is a asterisk mentioned over here, it means it has been considered as a foreign key and which is a reference for the master table. So today we have discussed about the key constraints, and these key constraints which are basically more powerful, which creates a database consistent and reliable. So constraints are very important, but we have to be very careful whenever we apply the constraints to a particular attribute and whenever we are designing a particular attribute as a key attribute. Thank you.